Mackey and Judd on Score North and ScoreNorth.com.
I would say I've been a bit upset about the way that things have been handled since I've been hurt. I wouldn't I'd be lying to say that things have moved smoothly since my injury. So yeah, I think that there's been a bit of a disconnect, I think, from the organization a bit and myself, and it's been tough at times, but right now for me, I think the most important thing is just trying to get healthy and
reckless speculation. Reckless speculation.
Jack Eichel, ladies and gentlemen,
Here
finally, after 5 years in the abyss of Buffalo, New York, a Sabres franchise that is floundering year after year after year.
It's been the Wolves.
Pretty much the hockey
They
Wolves.
are the Wolves.
Out there.
They're the Wolves.
Yeah,
The
I think they have
Wolves.
a little bit more success than the Wolves.
Yeah,
because they at least went to the
yes.
conference finals a couple times, 10 years ago.
Yep.
But ordinarily we save reckless speculation for Thursdays. That's it's reckless speculation Thursday on here. This was too juicy to pass up on a Write That Down Wednesday, which we'll also get to. Mackey and Judd. And boys, last night and also this morning, we have two titans of NHL insiding. Our own Mike Russo here from The Athletic in the Twin Cities, who's also plugged in nationally. And then Pierre LeBrun off the top rope, both speculating. I wouldn't even say recklessly. I would say educated speculation on the idea of disgruntled young superstar Jack Eichel being traded in a blockbuster to the Minnesota Wild sometime this summer. We'll get into some of the details of the reporting, but you've got two insider titans who are legitimately and from an educated standpoint floating the notion of Jack Eichel being traded to the Wild. Obviously, it can't happen in time for the playoffs. The trade deadline has passed. This would be an off-season discussion. But when you guys saw this stuff coming out last night and this morning, what were your initial thoughts?
Well, your initial thought, because of the talent of said player, is, oh my gosh, it'd be perfect. Pair him with Kaprizov, and you're off. I mean, that would be fantastic. That from that standpoint, it would be ideal. All of that being said, when I read Russo's entire piece and the breakdown of what the cap is going to be, and the fact that the guy whose shirt Declan is wearing right now is going to be in line, hopefully, best case, 8-year contract, millions of dollars. Eric Sinek needs a contract. When you look at what the salary cap ramifications would be and the moves that would need to be made to get Eichel, it becomes a little bit more daunting. And here's the one thing though that we don't know. And guys, this is true for any sport, and to me, it's the most important part of this discussion. The Buffalo Sabres haven't made the playoffs in 10 years. Like, they have been a non-playoff team, dumpster fire, basically, for a long time now.
And not like just missing, like a last place dumpster fire.
Yes, they've been a bad team. They've been a bad team for 9 of those 10 years. Eichel has been there since he was drafted in 2015-16 at the age of 19. He is now the captain of that team. Yes, he was hurt for much of 2020-21, but where this is going to get really dicey and intricate for whoever trades for him is the due diligence that you're going to need to do into him, because the question about Eichel and the Sabres is this: is he part of the problem, or if he escapes the problem, is he going to thrive? And the Sabres have had some guys who have done exactly that. My guy, ROR, as Dex knows, Ryan O'Reilly is absolutely one of my favorite players. And he went to Buffalo. And, this guy is a captain type, Phil. He is a really good player on and off the ice. And he floundered. And he got traded to the Blues. He won a cup and basically talked about what had gone wrong in Buffalo. Yep. The most recent example is Taylor Hall. Taylor Hall signed that contract in Buffalo and was literally awful. He wasn't scoring goals. I think he was a -21. I mean, it was what is wrong here? And there were people flat out saying that if he had spent the whole year there, he'd be in line for a contract that would be so far below what he is worth but then he gets traded to Boston at the deadline, and look at how he has thrived. So the most important thing with Eichel for whoever trades for him is you're going to have to make the decision from talking to people, and probably him as well, about if he is part of the problem in Buffalo or if escaping the problem would maximize him. Because if he's maximized, there's no question we're talking about a first-team All-Star type player.
Well, I mean, we have seen, if you're going to compare Buffalo to the Minnesota Timberwolves, there's been a lot of guys, even going back to the Kevin Garnett, once the Wolves started going, once Sprewell was gone and Cassell was gone, KG was here for like it was actually 3 losing seasons, because it was like a 500 season where they missed on the 8 seed in the last year of Sprewell Cassell. And then he was part of 2 losing teams that were like 20 games under 500 here. And then going forward, the Wolves only made the playoffs one time. They've only finished, I think, above 500 one time over that stretch. And think about how many guys have left this organization, just a cesspool organization for the majority of that period that can't get out of its own way, and then went on to add a ton of value to championship teams, right? KG goes on to Boston. Boom. You plug him into a competent organization, helps win a championship, kind of settles in as like the second guy behind Paul Pierce in a lot of ways, right? Kevin Love, I don't think his career panned out at that superstar level that maybe people thought, but he goes in, settles in, and he becomes the third guy on a championship team in Cleveland. Guys leave dumpster fire organizations and thrive all the time. Is your gut that he's part of the cancer, or is your gut that he is just needing to be cut from the cancer and he would rise up and become the player and contribute to a team that can win a Stanley Cup?
I've heard from people who have been around there in Buffalo and have observed him that he might not be part of the cancer, but he also might not be as fully engaged as you would like. But again, the problem here, to give him a break, is this one. When you play for a team that's this bad for this long and seemingly so poorly run, do you mature correctly? Because you don't have the points of reference then to actually see guys that get it, and so that's where the team that gets him potentially here is going to have to make a key decision. Now, I will say this: in Bill, I trust. Bill Guerin's the type of guy, because he was a captain. He's won 4 cups, 2 as a player. I think he can smell BS quickly. And so the most important thing here is if Bill Guerin inquires about Jack and is willing to make the deal, which, by the way, Phil, to your point, would be enormous. Like, this would not be, you're not going to get him for cheap. You'd be giving up a lot, including, I believe, Dex's favorite guy. Fiala, I think, would be in that trade. So what you would have to do is you would have to really trust your GM to have a BS detector here. Because if you're wrong, it goes wrong in a lot of ways, beginning with, and think about this, boys, beginning with the fact that if you repoison that room after seemingly cleaning it up so well this year, that's a huge step back. It's great to have a star player, but this is not rotisserie sports. This is not he's on my roster and he's producing. This person is around my team constantly. So that's a very important thing.
So Declan, what would it take, and if Fiala had to be included this summer, is it a deal breaker?
For me, it is. For me, it 100% is. I think even though you've lacked a center, you have 2 dynamic wings in Kaprizov and Fiala, and I really can't get rid of one of those. For sure, Fiala. I can't get rid of Fiala just to make that happen. For the first time in a long, long time, the Wild have a prospect pool that is basically ready to go and is very well regarded. They have 2 draft picks, so you can, in my end, you have a young goalie in Kaapo Kähkönen who does attract someone as possibly a number 1 goalie. If Cam Talbot's indeed your number 1 veteran goalie, and Kaapo Kähkönen is 24, looking for and a team wants to actually make him their number 1, and you have a high-regarded goalie prospect, I believe in Mason Shaw, Martin Jones, not Martin Jones, Mason Shaw.
Mason Storm, I think.
Mason Storm. Yeah, it sounds like a Sylvester Stallone character from our action movie reward.
Steven Seagal was super tight jeans.
By the way, boys, just
on
quick,
skates.
I watched our film last night. That's all I'm going to say.
I can't wait.
Kickboxer?
I watched Kickboxer.
I'm
Okay,
all in for Friday.
real quick side street.
Sorry.
Don't give away anything. But when I told you that the end of that movie terrifies me, like when they take the fight to the next level.
Yeah.
Like we got to talk about that. It seems very dangerous. I don't think they would
can't
allow
wait.
that in the UFC fight.
Well, anyway, we got to talk about a lot, okay, including your film choices, but that's beside the point.
Anyway, so
Talk to you on Friday.
Declan is trading all of the young goalies and keeping a 33-year-old Cam Talbot for the next couple years.
Well,
to
and you
get
have a
Jack Eichel.
goalie prospect who's probably 2 years ready, and you can find, like what the Wild have done with goalies is you've found Devin Dubnyk, you found Cam Talbot, you have found plug-and-play situations where it works for you. So I'm okay with trading Kaapo Kakinen right now if that's the centerpiece. And my last point on it is Buffalo is dumb. Like, Buffalo will bite an apple on a bad trade. And you might be, I'm not saying you can just fleece them and get, Jack Eichel for peanuts, but they're a pretty incompetent organization, and I wouldn't be surprised if they sold low on him.
Like, so Buffalo's like the dumb guy in your fantasy league that you can just be
100%.
Man,
Yeah.
I just need a big boost
But they're not.
to
But here's the
finish
problem:
money.
Eichel's value on the market is going to be established in print, like by a lot of people. So Buffalo's going to want what they hear. Russo threw out Fiala and Dumba.
I was going to say Dumba. I would trade Dumba.
Well, yeah,
Absolutely.
but I mean,
Heartbeat.
I think we all would. Here's my guess: Jack Eichel trade with the Wild, they would ask for Rossi, who is your top prospect center, Fiala, and a draft pick. They're going to want the farm. There's no way that they're not going to try. Eichel is he is a generational player for them. Like he has not succeeded, but he is. They are not. The parameters of the trade are going to be set elsewhere. So it's not going to be a Buffalo backdoor surprise. Hey, we got this call. We made this dumb trade. Whoops. It's going to be very well telegraphed. And guys, to your point, like LeBron and a lot of insiders are going to be talking about it. So I really do think that they would want your top prospect center and Fiala probably. And,
Okay.
and last point, here's your problem. To get Eichel in your cap, you're probably going to have to give up a guy who's going to make a lot because you can't have that guy and Eichel as well, and then the Kaprizov contract. That's your problem.
Okay, I guess it'll be sort of a game or a task I want to throw at you guys involving this Jack Eichel reckless speculation in a second. But did you guys know that hockey players are good golfers? They just have a sort of like a natural ability to
Long.
hit the ball a
Yesterday.
mile,
Yeah.
strong lower bodies, and
So what type of equipment
rotation.
do they like?
Well, I don't know what Jack Eichel plays, but I can tell you what I would recommend: PXG and the Gen 4 clubs that have arrived at PXG Minneapolis. These are the best clubs and the best performing clubs PXG has ever made. Now, if you're in the market for something a little bit more in terms of price, a little bit more within reach, the 0-11 clubs are also in the house at PXG Minneapolis. They're also packed with PXG technology, so check them out. PXG Minneapolis in Southdale Center, and a supporter of us here on Mackey and Judd and Purple Daily. And find out more at pxg.com/Minneapolis. Okay, there was a time when the Minnesota Timberwolves traded the only meaningful star in franchise history for a package, Boston Celtics, that did not include Boston's best young player, Rajon Rondo. Like, somehow the Timberwolves got into a discussion with teams in the NBA for one of the greatest players of all time, Kevin Garnett, and didn't get the best young player back in that trade. Boston said, oh, we're not trading Rajon Rondo, but we'll give you Marcus Banks, or I can't remember. We'll give you Sebastian Telfair and Al Jefferson, right? So if Buffalo is stupid, like Declan says, find me a path to Jack Eichel that doesn't, and we're assuming that Kirill is off the table, but let's also take Fiala off the table. Everybody else is on the table. Can you find me a path, not including Fiala, that gets you Jack Eichel? Is it multiple first-round picks? Is it?
It's your top prospect.
Is there
For
a way
sure,
where
man.
you could, like, would they be interested in Matt Dumba more than we think? Like, find me the path.
Our problem is we overvalue Dumba. So like we're always like, well, just trade Dumba, like it's going to be this. And I think teams are like, well, we take him probably, but we're not going to exactly include our best players in said trade. So they would want Marco Rossi, who's your top center prospect and top draft pick from 2021.
20.
or 20
last year. Yep.
They would want him. They would want, if I'm going to get you a path there, they would probably want a couple of first round picks at the very least. And then we'd start in on current players that I think, Dex, you'd probably at least offer up. I don't know that they would take them.
Eriksson Ek.
That's the interesting thing though. I actually think Bill Guerin would trade Kevin Fiala before Ek now, because Eriksson Ek is a center, which are harder to find, and he is a multi-talented, faceted player. And Fiala, I think, is going to cost you more. See, that's the thing, is we got to balance cap here, because they don't have a ton of cap. They've got enough to re-sign guys, but if you're going to acquire a guy like Eichel with a long-term, very rich contract, I think you have to get rid of a player that you really like, who is also going to cost you a lot. And Kaprizov, Phil, to your point, is not being traded. So beyond that's why. Here's my guess. Declan and I like Kevin a lot. I don't know that the franchise, if they could get Eichel, is as in love with Fiala as we are.
Mm-hmm. I can get down with that. Yeah,
Bill Guerin, Dean has coached Kevin since the minors, and he knows how to push the buttons, but there's frustration there. And I don't mean that it's contentious. I just mean that there's frustration there. But if you filled Bill Guerin with truth serum, I think he would tell you that he likes what Fiala brings. He's incredibly talented, but the lulls drive him crazy. And Eriksson Ek, as Dex can attest to, goes every game. Like, those are the guys that a guy like Bill Guerin absolutely treasures, because they're hard to find.
I think you would absolutely. I think like Kaapo Kakkonen is the centerpiece that's NHL ready. Like, it's a goalie. It's a goalie who could possibly steal Buffalo games. So I think Kaapo is the number one guy that I'm getting on my active roster that I can give to you right now. Now, Kaapo is also making, $700,000 against the cap and is extremely an affordable goaltender. So that doesn't help the Wild's cap problem, but it does still give the Buffalo Sabres a legit goalie prospect that if you can figure out your goalie first, then build things around, you're going to be fine if you're Buffalo. Second on the cap problem for the Wild, let's be real that Zach Parise is going to be off this roster next year. Now, it's $7.5 million. And I'm going to assume that not all that 7.5 is going to be completely wiped off your books for the next 4 to 5 years, because you're going to have to either eat some of that money. There's money that's deferred. It's not as clean as a sweep of $7.5 million for the next 4 seasons. But some of that money will be reduced, because I don't see any situation where Zach Parise is on this roster next season.
But if you're going to include him in this trade, then like they would view that as a favor that they're doing you.
Yeah.
Right. So the clearing Parise, that's a secondary piece to land Eichel. I don't think Parise is part of the trade that goes to Buffalo, but Parise's contract coming off to some degree does open up more cap flexibility. And if I'm the Wild, I give up at least you have 3 first-round draft picks over the next 2 drafts. I give up at least 2 of those first-round picks, and I give up Matthew Boldy or Marco Rossi. Which one do you want? Which one do you want? And I get Jack Eichel.
Rossi, I think.
Reckless speculation.
And they actually might, in a trade, ask for both of them. I probably would. But Phil, this is the parallel, the baseball parallel to this, to me, very much is this is an ace pitcher with great stuff, and like he has a chance to be a true ace, but the team's not there, and the team has floundered. So consider this to be, if the Twins were trying to get a young true ace, who, by the way, if you get him, has a lot of time left.
Yeah. The other thing you have to consider, too, when it comes to trading either Boldy or Rossi is, okay, like you could trade those guys for Eichel and maybe it's an immediate jolt, but is it possible that over the next 3 years that you'd rather have the young guys emerging in with this roster? Are you rushing the process almost like the Timberwolves did with that one pop-up year under Tom Thibodeau? Like, oh, you can get Jimmy Butler right now, but would you rather have Zach LaVine for the next 5 years, even though he's not ready yet, right? And that was the decision they made, and it made them better, but they didn't win a championship. And now, obviously, you'd rather still have Zach LaVine. I think you're good now at that position with Anthony Edwards, but that's the decision you have to make. I mean, if you made this trade, would it make you an immediate Stanley Cup contender in 2021-22? Or I guess I should say, would it allow you to go back to back, because we know they're going to make
because they're going to win the
couple of months
this season. Yeah, you know what? I am personally really curious to see what Rossi looks like here. If you put him with Kaprizov, And the Eichel thing, there's just enough red flags that I've heard that personally scare me. Now, perhaps, as I said, perhaps it's Buffalo, perhaps it's the team, perhaps it's not him. But as a guy who saw, and Dex did too, this locker room be absolutely what I felt was poison for a long time. Excuses, and it's not my fault, and just a lot of stuff that didn't really give you a good feeling about this team off the ice for its preparation on it. I would really hate to make a mistake here and be like, well, this guy's really good, but he's a pain in the ass. I can't articulate enough right now how, and we're not in there consistently, but how good I feel this room is and this team is, and why they're successful. And if you're going to mess with that, you better make damn sure you're right. Because, again, come back to the most important part. This is not fantasy sports. This is not, I drafted Jack Eichel for my team. It's going to be great. He's going to score a bunch of goals. This is a human being that's going to walk into a room with a bunch of guys who have done a really good job of turning around a culture and environment that took a long time to turn around.
Well, if you feel good enough and strong enough about your culture and your coach and GM who are willing to, and I'll read you a sad anecdote about Parise too here, but they had the watermelons and the grapefruits to do what they've done with Zach Parise this year, which is not an easy thing to do to that room. I mean, that had a chance to backfire. It didn't, and they're still playing well, despite awkwardly moving Parise out of this sort of centerpiece role and into a role where he's being scratched. If you feel good enough about your culture, I think you can insert guys, and it's more likely that they will become part of your culture as opposed to sucking the life out of it. Also from The Athletic and Mike Russo, Zach Parise's situation warrants paying attention to. Tuesday morning, late into the Wild's hour-long practice and before the team departed for St. Louis for the final 2 regular season games, the Wild were practicing their 2 power play units on both ends of the rink inside the X. In the neutral zone, skating alone in a red jersey was Zach Parise, the Wild's all-time leader in power play goals, somebody who scored 12 during last year's shortened season, and is 10 from being the all-time leading power play goal scorer for Minnesota-born players ever, had nowhere to be. The sad sight perfectly encapsulated what's been going on with Parise, not only lately, but all season. It's kind of amazing.
It's over.
You know what, though? Here's the thing about this, okay? Now, he's really good, and he works his ass off on the ice, and he has for a long time. And I still say July 4th, 2012 is the greatest free agency day in the history of sports in this town. I say all of those things, but I will preface that, I preface that by saying that this whole thing, that this was not going to be received well, personally, I think is laughable. Zach Parise was part of, again, I mean, this is the important thing about sports. He was part of, Phil, a culture that for a long time was not good. I mean, it's why for what, Dex, a year or two, if not, I think 2 years, we would come back and talk about Marcus Foligno is basically captain. Like, he's the one who falls on the sword when things don't go well. He's the one. So this notion that Parise's teammates were going to see Zach scratched for, by the way, an incredibly selfish move. Like, you could tell me, I was trying to get him an empty net goal. Come on. That his teammates were going to rebel, and his teammates were going to look at Dean and Bill and say, and I mean, Bill Guerin has been around the block. I could tell you right now, if Bill Guerin and Zach Parise walk into that room, Bill Guerin is not dealing from a position of weakness. But I mean, this is what, so as mean as this sounds, I love what they're doing because this is what I begged for. For how long, Phil? For like our entire show, right? Mm-hmm. Like this is what I began to beg for.
Well, but you didn't beg for him to be like, I mean, he was a good player.
Accountability though.
Yeah.
Accountability across the board. And if you're good enough to play, awesome. You should play a ton. And if you're not, you shouldn't. And if you overextend a shift for whatever reason, and you're Zach Parise who's slowed down, you should be scratched. And he was. No, I'm not picking on him. I'm saying the environment they've created is never going to cause this imaginary pushback that we seem to be like reading about now, where it might have backfired. This was the greatest move they could have made to make an example of a guy whose play has declined, no question about it.
What do you make of this little short sentence paragraph in Russo's story? Parise doesn't want to be a distraction heading into the playoffs, but this is clearly a trying time for him as he's gone 9 straight games without a point and is 1 goal from 200 with Minnesota. Parise declined comment on Tuesday, but it's believed his agent has been in contact with Guerin, and a sit-down was being arranged between Parise and Coach Dean Evason in St. Louis. So, all right, a couple things here. And this is just me, just a little reckless speculation among friends here, okay? This is just
Reckless speculation.
If you don't want to be a distraction, why are you trying to arrange a sit-down with the coach on the eve of the playoffs?
Yes.
Because you are upset and you don't care if you're a distraction. Yeah, no, I mean, personally, I don't find your statement reckless. I find it to be on point. And it's part of the problem with a lot of the old guard here, most of which is now gone.
Also, isn't it kind of weird that if you're, again, this is just, I'll just say it. If you're that great of a leader, and if you're that great of a guy in the room, and you're a pro, right? Why does your agent need to get involved on any level with 2 games left in the regular season?
Well, and
why don't you just go have man-to-man conversations with Guerin and Evason? Why does an agent need to be involved at all at this stage? At all? That's an off-season thing, right?
The only reason why would be if the person is basically trying to lay the potential groundwork to get out. But
you don't do that now.
But that all comes back to your point. Yeah, but they probably are. They're probably
before the trade deadline. Absolutely, get your agent involved. Let's get out of here.
Right. No, but I'm
trade
saying,
deadline's passed.
No,
this is a July conversation.
Right, but your point is the why, and my point is the why is to basically say what's going on here. Why is my guy not? I mean, he's not playing, and he's a healthy scratch, and it's not discipline. He's being scratched because they don't deem him to be one of their top 12 guys.
Is there a case
that's crystal clear?
Is there a case to be made? And I sort of tiptoed around this question last week. And just to put yourself in Zach's skates here for a second, okay? Listen, I know that I'm not the same player that I was 5 or 10 years ago. I know that my speed has eroded. I'm not going to be like a 17 minutes on the ice guy. Like, I totally get all those things. I'm not a top 6 forward. I'll even give you all of that. And maybe I'm not even power play 1 line guy, okay? But guys, I have a ton of experience. I've played in playoff games up and down throughout my career, and I am a proven commodity on the power play unit. So put me on power play 2 and find me 11, 12 minutes with the 3rd or 4th line in the playoffs because I have experience. If that's the conversation he wants to have with Dean Evason, does he have a point going into the playoffs?
0 point. 1, if you play the Avs, he's not quick enough to keep up. 2 is he's being scratched. I'm not putting you on power play 2. I'm scratching you. I didn't demote you to the 3rd line or the 4th line. I did that before. I'm scratching you because I don't think you're good enough to play the speed of the game that we're playing. But all of this to me, all the stuff that you just ran through, Phil, and that you read, all of this to me is exactly why this notion that the locker room was going to be upset about how Zach is being treated is ridiculous. Like, think about that. Hockey is the ultimate team game. It's weird, but it is. It's the ultimate we always put on a brave face.
The boys, the boys,
right? Think about if you were a hockey player and to what you said, eve of the playoffs. Playoffs are around the corner. I think they're going to start for the Wild on Sunday, okay? And you've got a veteran teammate who thinks of himself as a leader, who thinks of himself as a guy and was once probably the guy. And he's doing all the things that you just said. The playoffs are around the corner. His agent's going to go meet with the coach and the GM right now. He's going to be, and that you're telling me that you would push back for him? No, you wouldn't. You'd roll your eyes and be like, dude, you're not playing. Your time has passed. I'm sorry.
The agent thing is weird. Unless it was phrased like in an odd way in this article. Why is there an agent at all involved in anything now?
What's the meeting? Like, if it's just Zach and Dean, I understand if Dean's just going to tell him, hey, look, just to say it again, because I'm sure he said it once, we're not playing you because X, Y, and Z.
A meeting being arranged is the way. And Russo is as plugged in and also as plugged in with Zach Parise. That's interesting phrasing. A meeting is being arranged. It would suggest to me that there's just not like an open line of communication between Zach Parise and Dean Evason. Can't they just be on the phone last night and talk?
How about this? Zach has the answers and he doesn't like them. So he's trying to get them again and again and again until he hopes that he gets back in. But this is why the old wild guard that drives me and drove me crazy. You're about to start the playoffs. Focus on the playoffs. And you know what? If you want to sit by me in the press box and eat popcorn, that's awesome too. Let's talk some puck up there, Zach. But if you're not playing, you're just not playing.
Yeah.
So anyway, but I love where this team has gone from that standpoint. And this is a good move. Don't want to screw it up.
Do it. Make it happen, Billy. Friend of the show.
I'm guessing you guys will dive even deeper into this. Judd's Hockey Show is in full effect on the Mackey and Judd podcast feed and also on the Score North YouTube channel. So a little day early reckless speculation for you guys. We're going to take a deep breath, pound a couple shots of playoff yag, and fire up some write that down predictions and an accountability session.